New public transport projects always have their share of controversy, whether it's the environmental disruption of High Speed 2 or those Victorians who thought the London Underground would literally disturb hell. But few have been quite so controversial as the Edinburgh tram. Now, I'm not talking about the originals. Like most cities, Edinburgh once had a very extensive tram network. This began in 1871. From 1888, because the city is so hilly, it was an early adopter of cable haulage as opposed to horse murder. In the 1920s it was electrified, although Leith had introduced electricity on their system in 1905. But also like most cities, Edinburgh began running its tram network down in favour of buses, and the whole thing closed in 1956. Up until the 21st century, Edinburgh had no kind of a metro system. No light rail, no trams, no underground railways. It did have excellent bus coverage, but the feeling was that this wouldn't do in the long run. Edinburgh is the centre of government for Scotland, as well as an important city for business and tourism. The usual concerns of traffic and pollution in the city centre were ever increasing and risked strangling Edinburgh's economic development. The airport and the main railway station, Waverley, were handling more passengers every year. Rapid, high-capacity transport would become essential and probably not too far into the future. But there was no easy solution. Edinburgh is a historic city, the Athens of the North as it's called. You can't just build railways willy-nilly. There had been a proposal for a metro system in 1989 that had been rejected for expense reasons. There had also been a private proposal for a circular tram route in 1998, but again the council turned it down. In the face of this, the City Council took decisive action in 2002. They formed a company called Transport Initiatives Edinburgh. This was a non-profit organisation that could develop transport solutions separately from the council and also, if one were to be cynical, take the blame if things went wrong. A rather ambitious scheme emerged. There would be an enormous investment in public transport. A new network of tram lines would be built. A new railway station would be constructed beneath the airport, with new connections to existing lines. Congestion charges would be introduced, but the tram and railways would make park and ride facilities practical. Disused railways would be reopened. In April 2007, the Scottish Parliament approved the scheme. And then an election happened. Literally the very next month, the Scottish National Party won a majority of seats. The SNP had campaigned against congestion charging and the airport rail link on the grounds once again of costs and doubts about the capacity of the existing railway lines. So that was scrapped. No congestion charge, no park and ride, no new railway and no new tram lines. But while everyone was fine to abandon the other stuff, the government couldn't get enough votes to scrap the tram, so that would go ahead. But it wouldn't be as simple as that. Revenue for the trams was to be generated by the congestion charge. So the question arose, with no congestion charge, where was the money to come from? The original plan would have entailed building a network in phases. Phase 1A would have been a line from the airport to New Haven. Phase 1B would have been from Haymarket to Granton. Phase 2 would have been a short line connecting phases 1A and 1B to create a loop line. Phase 3 would have extended from Ingliston to Newbridge North. Finally, there was to be a line south to Musselburgh. But all this relied on money, so TIE's ambitions had to be scaled back. Last one in was the first one out, so no line to Musselburgh. The remaining lines were estimated to be relatively cheap as transport projects go. Edinburgh Council owned most of the land the lines would be using. Parliament agreed, somewhat reluctantly, to supply £500 million, with the remaining £45 million coming from the city. TIE made a number of deals with contractors on the basis of fixed cost. In other words, if the contractors went over budget, that was their problem. The contractors were Bilfinger, Berger and Siemens. Services would begin in 2009. No problem. Job done. Except no. Construction began in 2008. By the end of 2009, the lines were barely begun. But, TIE said, we'll totally have it running by 2012, we swear. Reports appeared in the papers suggesting that, in fact, the contractors had already gone over budget. TIE began legal action. Edinburgh Council sighed and scaled the project back again. No line to Granton. in either direction. No line to Newbridge North, no line to Newhaven. At one point it looked like the line wouldn't even get to Princes Street, the city's main shopping street and connection with Waverley Station. Also, now it was going to be 2013 for sure, swear on me Nan's grave. The project suffered delay after delay. Surveys used were woefully out of date, so work kept getting stopped whenever they discovered, e.g., a water pipe or basement that wasn't where it should be. Not to mention all the ruins of things no one even knew were there, like a medieval village, an aqueduct, a Bronze Age settlement, a cemetery, and a leper hospital. Normally the way these projects work is that you stop everything at the site, continue work further on, and come back once everything's sorted where you stopped. But, for whatever reason, work was put completely on hiatus. Funding shortfalls and contractual disputes also caused work to be paused several times. Some lines that had already been laid were dug up and laid again due to flaws in construction. Road closures were causing traffic jams, the exact opposite of what the trams were supposed to be doing for the city. Businesses and residents complained about the loss of road access. Cyclists complained that the tram lines were a hazard, which, by the way, was never fully resolved and has since resulted in hundreds of injuries and at least one fatality. All in all, the people's patience was wearing thin. Protests were held. One memorable placard said, "The Athens of the North? Yep, both are in ruins." TIE chairman David Mackay called the project Hell on Wheels, and his sentiments were shared by his colleagues. TIE went through 3 chairmen and 3 chief executives in quick succession. The press, the people, and the politicians all laid into them, and they in turn blamed Billfinger, Berger, and Siemens. The council took BBS and TIE to arbitration, the legal equivalent of saying, if you two can't behave, I'll knock your heads together. The arbiters concluded that TIE were at fault. BBS got a nice, fat £80 million settlement, and TIE were dissolved in 2011. Now it was the council's problem. They faced a dilemma. The tram was probably the most unpopular transport project since the trolley problem. Should they keep going in the face of protests? But on the other hand, if they abandoned it, that was hundreds of millions down the toilet and nothing to show for it but an incomplete set of rails to nowhere. They voted to continue, under new consultants Turner and Townsend. In 2014, which you will note is neither 2009, 2012 nor 2013, the tram opened from Edinburgh Airport to St Andrew's Square, which is nominally the interchange for Waverley Station. By this time it had cost £770 million. Pre-opening estimates suggested that the line wouldn't break even until 2029. But the controversy didn't end there. Motorists complained that prioritising trams at junctions would once again lead to traffic congestion. Lothian Buses, the company that runs the trams, initially refused to allow concessionary bus passes on the trams. Eventually they relented in the face of pressure from the media, but only for Edinburgh residents. And the fact that the tram consists of a single route means that the benefits for the city as a whole are limited. So what about the line itself? It's 8.7 miles, or 14 kilometres long, with 15 stops. From St Andrew's Square to Haymarket it runs along the street. Thereafter it's segregated from other transport. There is one park and ride at Ingliston. The trams are of the CAF Urbos 3 type, custom built for the particular requirements of the hilly and historically sensitive route. These are the largest trams in operation in Britain and among the largest in the world. They include low-floor access and wheelchair spaces, as well as luggage racks. 27 were built, but this was on the basis of the earlier version of the scheme, so Edinburgh now has about double the number of trams it actually needs. TIE attempted to offload them on the Croydon tram link, but the Croydon lads weren't interested. I haven't been able to find out why, but I presume it's at least in part because the Edinburgh trams are considerably larger and heavier than the ones in use in South London. Despite the disastrous construction process, the council announced in 2014 that an extension to Newhaven was back on the table. Things were looking good. Ridership exceeded estimates. But the old question of funding reared its ugly head. Well, we're not paying for it, said the UK Parliament. This is a Scottish thing. Well, we're not paying for it, said the Scottish Parliament. We didn't want it in the first place. Eventually, again reluctantly, the Scottish Parliament did provide a grant. Construction is underway and expected to be complete in 2023. at an estimated cost of £12.5 million. Lessons have been learned from the previous nightmare. Among other things, improved traffic management has been put in place and a policy known as one dig, i.e. you dig up the road once, do everything you need to do, and that's it. No second chances, no messing around. What of the future? Well, controversy, controversy, controversy. The tram has left a sour taste in Edinburgh's collective mouth, and the blame can be laid at many doors. An inquiry into the whole fiasco has been ongoing since 2014, costing another £500 million. There are ideas to extend further, possibly reviving the original schemes. But the tram has been operating at a loss since 2018. Maybe further extensions would get it back into the black, or maybe it would just be good money after bad. No one knows, and a lot of people don't want the opportunity to find out. Well, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, then please do leave a like and subscribe for more. I always think this project was a missed opportunity, and if it had been done right, it could have really benefited the city. And now I feel like any future proposals won't be given a proper chance. Maybe there's some parallel universe where everything worked out and Edinburgh is heading towards the same kind of network they have in Manchester or South London. Anyway, as always, thanks to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon, you are the completed survey to my proposed tramline. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio!